What's up, animal lovers? It is Thursday, so we are back with another Facebook Live. This week, I am with all three of our keepers here, and we'll introduce them in a second. My name is Eden. I'm the education manager here. And today, what we're going to be doing is giving you all a chance to ask our keepers questions, find out more about them, learn about their job a little bit. We are trying to highlight them and show them off because they are so awesome and so vital to what we do here and giving quality care to our animals. So I'm really excited for this chance. What's up, everyone? We have some people joining in now. So I'm going to turn the camera on them. I'll give them a second to introduce themselves a little bit, and then I would love to hear some questions from you all, what you want to hear. If not, we have some questions we'd like to ask them as well. So here we go. This is our keeper panel today. We have Mason. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi. I'm a keeper first. I'm Mason. I'm a keeper here. I came here from Nebraska. And the last job I did before this, I worked wildlife rehab in Nebraska. My last job title was raccoon supervisor. So
that's awesome. Best title ever. All right.
I'm Catherine. I am the current animal care manager here at the sanctuary. I've been here since 2018. I am originally from Illinois. My last job was working as a living collections keeper at Zoo, Montana with their wetlands and barn animals. I didn't have a cool title.
Hi, I'm Izzy. I got here last September, so just a little over a year ago. And my job before this was doing sea turtle research down in Florida.
Nice. Awesome. So if anyone has any questions for any of them or all of them today, please drop them in the comments. We have some written up here, so I'll start off with those while I'm waiting for your questions. One question is, of course, what is your favorite part of the job? That's probably one you get all of the time, especially from the kids. Anyone want to share what your favorite part of the job is?
Obviously just the animals, but even if it's like a bad day or you're having a bad day, one of them, someone always cheers you up and someone always makes you smile and someone always makes you happy, even if it's like the worst day ever and someone's died, someone else will make you happy and smile, and it's great.
Yeah, that's true.
Just say it's a hard thing to pinpoint. It's a super rewarding job. Just because you get to see every day the fruits of your labor and how it's paying off for their lives. But like Mason says, you can be having a terrible day personally or with work, something goes wrong, but there will always just be one animal who is able to come up and just lift your spirits. Either be it just by a nose boop, or they make a sound, or they just get really excited to see you. It's just they know who we are and they get excited about us. So that's just very exciting for us as well.
That's so true. They definitely do that. Izzy, do you have another part of the job that you love?
They pretty much said the best part. Yeah, just improving the relationships with every animal every day and seeing how it goes.
I have a question from Sam Thomas. What made you all get into wildlife? Why do you do the job that you do?
At least for me, it's really hard to pinpoint back to. I've never wanted to work in any other field. I was always the little girl who, when people would ask what they want to do when they grow up, expecting it to be like a princess or something nonsensical for a 3-year-old. I was always going to be a zookeeper. I always knew that. A lot of it links back to my childhood zoo, seeing those animals and just growing up and looking at them, and specifically to Asian elephants. I just knew I wanted to get into this field and help care for wildlife that couldn't care for itself. And Steve Irwin was also a huge part of that.
Me too. Yeah. Okay, question for everybody. What's your favorite species and what's your favorite species to work with? Izzy, I'll have you go first. Are you ready?
My favorite species is the binturong. It's a Eastern Asian species. They're really cool. They're bear cats. They smell like popcorn. But my favorite species to work with here is probably the wolves. Just working on training with them.
Nice. Catherine?
Favorite species in general would be African elephants, or just elephants in general. I will take either African or Asian ones. But to work with here would probably be Bob, our bobcat.
Nice.
Favorite species, just in general, probably orcas. That was like my first love in the animal world. And then here, I think it's so hard to pick favorites. It's a gross question. It's hard. Mika, the three-legged raccoon, is like my little best friend, but I do like to do stuff with the bears too. So
nice.
Mika and the bears. And Cooper's great.
I know.
Great. Love Cooper.
Cooper's a fun time.
But
Okay, I have another question. Do you all have any pets at home? What animals at home do you take care of? Of course, they all have pets. So you want to go?
Well, Izzy and I live together, so we have 2 leopard geckos right now named Janet and Elaine. And I used to have a cat, but he died, but I still talk about him all the time.
I've got a little bit more. So I currently living with me, I have 2 cats named Colonel Mustard and General Sal. I have 2 guinea pigs named Tiny Tim and Captain Jack. And then I also have a one-eyed French bulldog named Bingley, who I am still getting used to because we haven't been together very long.
I have a fun question from the audience. What is your favorite poop story? Does anyone have a good poop story that they'd like to share?
Ooh,
Yes.
So one of my first things that I did in the animal care field was volunteer at this place in Thailand. And so we would go in and we would clean up. They had Asian elephants, and we would clean up the poop from, like, I think it was 2 days. We did like every other day. And so we would pile it up into the back of the truck, and it would fill the back of the truck.
Oh my.
And they had a bunch of, like, dogs that just, like, went around the sanctuary. And there was this one dog specifically that would jump up in the truck and just, like, hang out in the elephant tub for, like, the entire time.
No way.
That's so funny.
Any other fun poop stories?
Not from when I was of age to work, but I grew up on a farm with animals, and dried horse manure was often what we used to play tag.
What?
And we would whip that at people.
No
That
way.
was our childhood on the farm.
That is so good. Okay, I have another question from the audience. What is your favorite wildlife encounter that you've had outside of the sanctuary? So I'm guessing that could be actual wild animals in the wild or at another place that you've worked, captive animals. Would anyone like to share a crazy encounter story that you have?
I spent a month studying abroad in Africa, and we had elephants walking through our camp every night. We had lions walking through our camp. Some warthogs came into camp one night, and some monkeys stole some tampons from people, so that was kind of bizarre. I think that was all pretty crazy.
That is pretty wild to live so closely with them. For those who are just joining us, I see a lot of new names in here. Today we are giving a chance for our keepers to share about themselves and for you all to ask questions. So if anyone has questions for our keepers and wants to know more about them or their job, please drop them in the comments below and I'll be reading them. Does anyone else have a crazy wildlife encounter? Izzy or Catherine, you want to share?
I don't know necessarily if it was crazy, but one of my favorites outside of this job was when I was working sage grouse research up in Roundup, Montana. We were doing chick tagging, and that's when you go out in the middle of the night and you're shining a light and you're tracking these hens who have just hatched out chicks, and then you're gathering the chicks to put tags on them to check for survivability rate. So I guess catching and finding those hens and their chicks in the middle of night, in the middle of the prairie, away from everything, was a super exciting, fun time. So that was a good time for me.
That is
sage grouse.
That is super
Fun
wild.
time.
Is he?
One of my favorite experiences that has happened to me was the first time I got to see one of, like, I love weasels, pretty much any weasel, even though binturong is not one. But this one time I was out birding back home. I'm from Minnesota, and it was like the middle of winter. I'm up in this place called the Sax-Zim Bog, which is a big birding place through like the entire state. And there was like this deer carcass that was hung up to bring in birds. They can't do it in the summer because that would attract bears, but they had it up for the winter, and I was just watching it, and a pine marten came up and was chewing on it, and it was just amazing.
Whoa.
Weasels are fun.
It was so cool because he would run and eat some, and then he'd go and hide, and then all the birds would come back, and then he'd come back and all the birds would leave.
Wow. For those who don't know, that's pretty rare sighting in wildlife, in the wild. Okay, I have an important question that lots of people out there might want to know the answer to. For you all, how did you get started in the field, and what recommendations for someone trying to get into an animal field would you have for them? Any suggestions or advice? But first, how did you get started in the field?
So my first foot in the door started when I was 14, back in Illinois. I applied for and got accepted into a 3-year junior seakeeper internship program at a Nairobi Zoo in west central Illinois, in Coal Valley. And I did that for 3 summers. We had to do a 2-week training camp in the beginning of each summer to get prepared and just go over everything we've learned. We gave educational talks, sometimes with animal ambassadors. Other times we just had artifacts. We made enrichment. I worked with their hoofstock keepers and worked in their petting zoo. So I did that from the ages of 14 to 17. So I did that during the summer. Even after I moved to Montana, I went back during my summers to finish out the program. And then when I was 17, I started volunteering at Zoo Montana and did about a year there as a volunteer/intern, and then started working as a keeper my freshman year of college. The day before I turned 19 is when I started working as a keeper there, and I just did that all through college and really built my work experience as well as getting my degree. So I guess that would be a big thing for me to say is, like, as long as you can try and get any practical experience, that's really important, because the more hands-on knowledge you have, no matter how small, it's going to be important in the long run getting into this job. So
Yeah, absolutely it is. Anyone else want to share their experience and recommendations? Izzy?
Yeah, so I started later than 14. I didn't really have my first true experience in animal care until college, which was, I went to school for zoology, and then in my program, I decided to write a grant through my university, which funded my trip to Thailand that I had mentioned before. So I got to spend time over there doing a lot of what we do here, caring for the animals at a sanctuary. And then after I graduated, I got my first internship, which was at the Roosevelt Park Zoo in North Dakota. And I got to work with their red pandas. And then from there, I just kind of had different experiences across the U.S. in different locations.
Wow. Mason?
Yeah, I started way later than 14 too. So
And that's totally fine and good for people to hear.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I mean, you just got to start with internships. I started with rehab internships, and then I got hired there the next year. I worked that, and then I graduated May 2020 and moved out here in October, and now I work here. But yeah, it's just getting as many experiences as you can, and when you're in college, getting those unpaid internships if you can afford to do that. Because it's kind of tricky to do that after college.
Mm-hmm.
Money to live.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just all about getting experience. Like,
Yeah.
anything helps.
Yeah, so-
Volunteering where you can to show what you're passionate about.
So that was actually something with me. I picked my college based on what experience I could get around it. So that's the reason I went to Rocky Mountain College in Billings, Montana, so I could continue my volunteer experience at that time at Zoo Montana and build that resume. So anything you can do, even if it's volunteering at a shelter, is beneficial.
Yeah, for sure.
Just to show you have a little bit more of that dedication to it.
Yeah. We have some love for red pandas being shouted out in the comments. People are on the same page. Okay, rapid fire. Real quick, what do you think is the most important part of your job? Mason, what do you think is the most important part of your job?
I want to say keeping them alive.
Of course, Catherine.
And enrichment.
And Rachel.
I'm going to say keeping them alive and fed with water.
I'll say keeping them alive in training.
And training. Oh, speaking of training, no, it's too many. Most important thing. Training. Does anyone want to tell us about a training experience that they've had? That's something that is really important for animal care jobs. It's something that they do depending on where you work, and can be really a unique opportunity.
So not here, but when I worked at Zoo Montana with their North American river otters, Mia and Ben, they, at the time when I was working there, were a really successful breeding pair for the species survival plan. And so they would have litters pretty, like every other year was pretty standard. And so when we were getting ready to send those otter pups off to their new homes, we have to get them trained for sedation. And so we would tube train them. We had this PVC tube that they would go through next to the fence, and we were able to get them to hold there so we could inject them with the sedation and any sort of vaccinations, things like that. And that was just a really rewarding thing to see them kind of go from start to finish with us, because we didn't have them more than like a year, but we were able to see them ready to go and trained where we were able to move them without stress.
That's so cool. They're so smart. Would you like to share any training experiences, Izzy?
As you would.
Yeah, Izzy does a lot of training with our animals here.
One of the neatest training experiences that I ever had, and I say neatest because I didn't really go into this experience knowing this was an animal that could be trained, but I helped target train a striped burrfish. So what we would do is we would offer them a pipe of a certain color, and she would come up to it and she would touch it, and then she would get her food. And the purpose of this was having her come up to the top of the tank to see us would help us kind of get a look at her and make sure everything looked okay and that she was healthy.
That's so cool. Even fish can learn. It's incredible. Are there any other day-to-day responsibilities that we haven't covered so far that you all have, that people should know about, that are part of the job if they're considering it and want to have a full vision of what it would be like to be in your role?
So a big part of the job too, so we communicate a lot on a day-to-day basis, so we know what the behaviors and every animal is acting like. But people might not realize there's a lot of record keeping and also ordering, because all the food here has to be ordered for the most part, and then keeping track of financials and stuff, because we have to stay in a budget, or that's a little bit more me, but we have to stay in a budget and make sure we're keeping track of things. So you have to have an understanding so you're not just overspending with everything. So it's just a lot of communication with the rest of the staff and things like that, just so you can keep things in line.
Absolutely. That's a big part of it. Anything else that we didn't touch on today?
There's a lot of problem solving on the spot, because you never know what's going to happen. Like, one of our raccoons found a fish hook somewhere and had a fish hook in his mouth when I went to feed him, and I was like, what the heck? And it's like, things come up and you have to be able to like think on your feet and solve problems and get it dealt with.
Absolutely. That's a huge part of it, about it. It's a big responsibility making all these fast decisions when animals' lives are on the line. I have another question from the audience and then about 2 more, and then we'll wrap things up here. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. I know maybe many of you are sticking around because we said we have a big exciting announcement at the end. So please stay through for these last few questions if you'd like to hear about what our exciting news is. So one more question we have is, does the Yellowstone Wildlife Sanctuary accept volunteers? I guess we can all answer that. Yes.
Yes. Right now, we don't really have volunteers that work with the animals, but we do have volunteer positions where you can help around grounds with our facilities, gardening, education. We aren't prepared yet to have volunteers helping the keepers per se, but we do accept volunteers for sure.
Yes, and even if you aren't working with animal care, it's still good to have on your resume that you worked in a place that takes care of animals. If you are interested in volunteering, you can stop by the gift shop and leave us your contact information or send myself an email. My email is on our website, on our education page, and it is eden@yellowstonewildlife.org. So feel free to reach out to me and I can help set you up with some volunteer work. Okay, 2 more questions. Have you ever participated in any animal births?
So,
Have to get close so they can hear you. Kind of.
So as I said before, my position here, I was down doing sea turtle research. And what that looked like is that we would run the beach and we were marking and caging to protect sea turtle nests. And so oftentimes when we were running the beach, we did night work, so we actually got to see the sea turtles laying their eggs. So I saw that part, as well as I was lucky enough to actually see 6 sea turtle nests hatch, and I got to watch all the little babies come out of the sand and head towards the ocean.
Oh,
So.
That's amazing. I think that counts.
But yes, I have seen and been involved with a couple different births. Some of them not here. So I've grown up with horses, and my sister is currently a breeding manager on a horse farm in Texas. So I've seen several mares give birth to foals, and I've helped with that. And since I was a little tiny girl, I've been seeing that. I've had cats that I've had to help give birth when they were breached and kind of backward, and you have to assist. I didn't see an otter birth, but I've seen one fairly close after when they're still wet and a little juicy.
Nice.
But yeah.
We were hoping to have an animal birth here at the sanctuary this summer.
Give us all the signs, and then it's just like, psych.
Nope. We thought our bison Luna was going to have a baby. It didn't happen, but maybe soon. Speaking of that, last question. Have you ever worked with any baby animals?
Wow, that's our big news!
Yeah, we have to get in close. Look at who we have.
So we are currently working with and raising a 3.5-month-old bobcat named Dub. He came from Montana Wild up in Helena. They actually reached out to us. We found out about him on August 11th, and we're able to get things worked out where he was going to come with us, and we've had him since October 15th.
Yes, we've been hiding a baby bobcat in the back of the sanctuary, which is really hard secret to keep, but we're so excited to tell everybody about him now. It is going to be a while until he will be out in the public. Do you want to tell folks a little bit about the introduction process and why that's going to take so long?
Our introduction process with him, it's going to start all inside our barn in our quarantine area. We're going to take Bob inside, and they're going to meet through a barrier, a chain link barrier, where we can observe and make sure things go okay. So they're going to be just meeting through a fence for the first while they get used to it. There's probably going to be a lot of yowling because cats always yowl and scream. But then once they start to calm down through the fence, we will do introductions between them inside while we can all be there and present in case something goes wrong. Because it's going to be a long time. Like, they weren't just going to be friends right away. And then before we do both of them outside, we will probably bring dugout on his own so he can get a feel for the enclosure while Bob is inside. And then we're just going to slowly work our way up to them being out for a little bit together outside, to being out for full days while Doug still goes inside, to eventually Doug will live on enclosure 24 hours. So yeah, we don't really have a time frame because we aren't going to try and rush that at all. We want to take that as smoothly as possible for both of them. But we are very excited. We think this is going to be good for Bob, especially since Doug is so young that he's going to be able to kind of mold his little buddy into something.
Yeah,
So we're very excited.
It's been really fun. It's a cool opportunity for Gus too, because bobcats are such rare animals to see in this area. And now we'll have 2 to show to the world. So we're really excited about that. We will be definitely posting